Roosevelt is now deliberately moving Japan into attacking us. Finally, in August, I think it was, of 1941, he gave them an ultimatum. Through Cordell Hull, his Secretary of State, they had two Japanese ambassadors that come to Washington. And he said, you must withdraw from the mainland of Asia. Since 1937, they'd been trying to conquer China, and they'd already conquered Manchuria. If not, we will put an embargo on you. And they were getting, most of their oil came from us, and scrap metal. They didn't have metal of their own. They imported. If you don't obey this ultimatum, they immediately prepared for an attack on Pearl Harbor. Apologists for Roosevelt, in this instance, by the way, I am pro-Roosevelt and pro-New Deal. I'm anti-American empire. Apologists for Roosevelt say that he expected the attack to come at Manila or some other place. He didn't expect this massive all-out attack on Pearl Harbor, which cost us 3,000 lives. It came to pass on the 7th of December, 1941. A week before the attack, he wrote a letter, it's all a matter of history, to Wendell Willkie, the Republican opponent, his Republican opponent in the previous election. And he said, we will be attacked probably before next Monday. And we were attacked on Sunday. Now, if he could write that a week before to Wendell Willkie, why didn't he write it to the commanders at Pearl Harbor? The only warning that they were given by the War Department was to watch out for saboteurs, that they were around. And a funny order came to move some of the newer ships out of Pearl Harbor and send off in a westerly direction. I hope that answers you.
Bloomington, Indiana, with about 10 minutes left to go. You're on the air.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to Gore Vidal, and I appreciate what C-SPAN is doing in exposing different points of view. I have a question about three specific individuals. First of all, Howard Zinn. I'd like to know if you're a friend of his and if you approve of his work. Second of all, Allen Ginsberg. I'd like to know what your opinion is on his role as a spokesman, not just for radical causes, but particularly for the cause of tolerance for sexual diversity. And finally, I'd like to revisit the subject of Ralph Nader, where I really don't understand your opinions, because the opinions you've expressed about the duopoly are virtually identical to Nader's. And when you say Gore is thicker than Nader, are we to take this to mean that you're supporting him because of familial connections, because he supports NAFTA, GATT, corporate managed trade? He is totally inadequate on the environment and health, and he has a dependence on corporate money. So I'd like to hear your view on that.
Well, I certainly sympathize with your position, and you haven't said anything that I regard as untrue about Gore. There's a bit more to Nader that I well remember when I was with Dr. Spock. I was co-chairman of the People's Party, 1968 to about, 72. And Nader made no statement about the Vietnam War. He avoided it, and that was the great issue of that period of time. I'm not pointing a finger at him. I'm just saying that I would find him a more attractive figure politically if indeed he had taken a stand. I see. Well, I've been through this already. Yes, there's a good point in making not a duopoly, but a third party. But there isn't a duopoly. There's a monopoly. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party are the same party. They're the corporate party of America. They're paid for by the same people. Yes, Gore is part of that. But between an intelligent duopolist, or monopolist, I should say, and an unintelligent one, like Bush, I'm afraid I would vote for, despite, or because perhaps of the family connection, for the more intelligent one. One of those two is going to be elected, and it better be Gore of the two. that he is totally unsatisfactory on many I care about and you care about, is something else. And I don't even know if it's personal. I don't know him. I can't speak for him. But I would certainly say he's part of the most corrupt political culture that the United States has ever seen. We've had some bad patches before, but this is like nothing else. He is part of a system. Can he transcend it? I doubt it. But I hope he can. That's the best I can do.
Howard Zinn or Allen Ginsberg?
I don't know who Howard Zinn is.
Historian.
Allen Ginsberg was an old friend of mine, and he's wonderful. He, on sexual diversity, he was wonderful, and he was a charming man, and I miss his not being alive.
Next call, Springfield, Missouri.
Yes, sir. You talk about there being a police state and that sort of thing having developed after World War II. Two major futuristic police states, if you will, have been written about and celebrated quite a lot this century in terms of, or what I'm speaking of is, of course, Orwell and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Of the two, which do you feel that we're more approaching?
Well, I must say Aldous Huxley sounded a lot more fun than ours, with that soma everybody was taking. Of course, I suppose we can say the drugs are the equivalent today, but I don't see us going in either of those directions. Everything changed after '89. We lost our enemy. It takes a lot of money to create opinion as powerful as the opinion our ownership created for us in the Russians are coming, and communism is everywhere, when it isn't anywhere, at least not in the United States it wasn't. I see it more as too few people have too much money, too many people have too little, and the graspingness and the total power of corporate America. If you own the New York Times, if you own the President, if you own the Congress, there's no way for the people to express themselves. There's no means of redress. You can't say we've got a great, out of the West, out of the Monongahela Valley came a man, a titan. You can't do that anymore. Times won't report the great new leader. His speeches will not be recorded. They have silenced just about every dissenting voice in the country, and done it very, very successfully. We have C-SPAN here, for which we should all be very thankful, that at least they are able to fall, as it were, between the cracks of a pretty monolithic structure. There isn't much else.
So does the Internet give you hope that...
I don't understand the Internet. I mean, I don't know what it's all about. I don't use it. I look at it. I've seen several sites with my name on it, and one is run by a guy who seems to be making money out of it. Somebody told me. I don't know. Yes, anything that one person or one corporation cannot control is obviously going to be free, or potentially free. So maybe that is an answer. I don't, but not my subject.
Miami.
Mr. Vidal, let me say it's an honor to speak to you. I came to you at 25 years old, late in life, but fortunately before the establishment and the propaganda, the admittedly impressive job, I was able to turn a once idealistic 14-year-old into a bitter and curmudgeon at age 27. But a question and a comment. First off, I'd like to ask if you think it's possible in my lifetime for someone to campaign and have a successful shot of being president without abiding to the agenda of the Jesus Christers, as if to say someone who is an agnostic, who sees religion and what it's done and campaign on that trend. And the second point is that I think you're much too harsh on your old friend John Kennedy. His idealism still rings true for today, and I think in light of the revisionists of the last 20 years, he comes across as a better president and certainly a more idealistic figure than the crop that is today. Thank you very much.
Well, on Jack Kennedy, I knew him pretty well, and he was one of the most charming men I've ever known, one of the funniest. But he, for First of all, he didn't have a liberal bone in his body. It was ambition, ambition. And he really believed in the Cold War. You know, Truman and Eisenhower were two old pros. They knew the Cold War had been cooked up by Truman. The Russians are coming so that we could establish NATO, the CIA, militarize the economy, control our own people, not to mention everybody else who falls under our sway. They're very cynical. And in fact, Eisenhower, in his farewell to the nation in January '61, when Jack came to office, he warned of the military-industrial complex. He also, something that people forget, he warned of the influence on the universities of the military-industrial complex. He said, once a university accepts a large federal allocation of funds, that university ceases to be free, where you should have free inquiry, etc., and you will not have it because of the necessity they will feel. I'm interpreting now, not quoting him, that they will feel the government wants, and this is the effect of the history departments. They are serving up history, even near history, like Kennedy. They're serving it up in order to create a kind of false picture of a country that anybody can be president, and land of opportunity, of the people, by the people, for the people. All that has been erased in the last 50 years. There is nothing left of it except false histories and hagiographies. And what was his other question?
It was about winning the White House.
Wait. As an agnostic, I think you better keep quiet about it, because Jefferson got caught on that, and Lincoln almost got caught. Both were agnostics. Lincoln came to use God a lot in speeches in his last year or two. The Almighty and God. He never mentioned Jesus. In all of the Federalist Papers, the Founding Fathers, God is mentioned only twice. Jesus is not mentioned at all. You might tell some of your Jesus Christ friends that the founders of the country were men of the Enlightenment. And by and large, they were either agnostic, atheist, or not interested. They nearly got Jefferson, who finally said he was a deist, which means nothing at all. He just thought there was probably a God, and slithered out of that one. Lincoln wrote a book called pamphlet called Infidelity, meaning not believing in God. And he showed it to Herndon, his law partner, and Herndon said, this is an all-out attack on Christianity. I said, oh, this is great stuff, said Herndon. Now burn it, because you're going to be president. So don't publish Infidelity.
Our 3 hours is finished. You're about to say hallelujah. As we close, let me show you once again Gore Vidal's latest novel. It is called The Golden Age. It is the 7th and final in this series of books chronicling American history, published by Doubleday and available across the country in bookstores. Mr. Vidal, thank you for spending so much time with us. We appreciate it.
You can see Book TV's 3-hour in-depth interview with author, playwright, and essayist Gore Vidal again tonight at midnight.